Welcome to the back office teardown lab. Today you see before you a sanding machine. One of my sons gave me this, that they found it in Hedge. Now I haven't really talked too much about my running exploits and where we live, but there's all sorts of stuff gets dumped by the sides of the road, and I have to say the most notable thing recently that I got was a Bluetooth speaker, and that was smashing. I think I posted that in my Discord or maybe on Twitter. But just, yeah, loads of really random stuff that works. In fact, there was, somewhere around here, quite a good watch. It's up there somewhere. Oh, there we go. Look. Once I found this, just sitting there on the pavement, a Seconda watch. So, you know, being always curious for something to mess around with, I don't mind picking stuff up and go, I'll have a go. And then if it doesn't work, I'll throw it in the recycling. So I'm keeping our local area clean. My son dragged this thing in. It's like I've infected them with my strange ways. And for all intents and purposes, it looked really clean. I mean, I'm not going to say it looks new because it's clearly been sitting out in the weather for a while, but this is a Firm, which I think is one of the brands that Screwfix pushes, and I plugged it in and pulled the trigger and it worked. The only problem is it didn't stop working, so the trigger was permanently shoved up into it. So I reckon, because there's only a few screws, if we crack this open, we may well just be able to free that trigger, and then I get another power tool, so that's cool. Now the one thing that this did do when I turned it on first, it just absolutely flooded the kitchen with spiders. It was full of spiders, so I'm really hoping they've all decided to go away now after it's been sitting in the garage for a couple of days. Let's crack this open. And so it's very stiff, and there are stuff falling out of it already. Had to stop the camera for a bit because honestly, I just started levering on this and it really doesn't want to come apart. I suspect it's got to hold all the bearings and the motor as part of this plastic enclosure. So it's designed not to let go. And you can see my thumb is actually stuck in there. That's how tenacious this thing is. Found the issue. There seems to be another couple of hidden screws. So close. I can taste it. We've passed most of the cobwebs. There is a little bit of corrosion in here. It's definitely been left outside for a fair old time. However, the bearings, although a bit rusty on the outside, a bit of fly rust, I think the bearings on the interfaces are all okay. They seem to be turning, so you should be able to get this going. That's it. So this is the wrong half to get off. We ideally would have wanted to get that half off, but it wasn't cooperating at the time. But this is pretty reasonable, actually. I'd say this is a glass fibre filled plastic because there's no twisting on it. It's a very rigid piece. And you can see here, it's nice and simple. You have the brushes. The motor brushes would have been replaceable. They've gone here. You can see the motor's still spinning nicely. The nice simple speed controller. I've always wondered how they work, actually, these main speed controls. A BTA06. Is that some sort of triac or something? And then you have the trigger. And this is the bit, of course, that we are worried about. And you can see it's very crunchy indeed. Look at this, hardly any wear on it, actually, at all. It's nice and smooth, and the brushes have plenty of meat. I wonder if this thing gave up the ghost. You know, its switch started giving trouble to the owner and then they just literally just chucked it. First, let's see if we can force any kind of contact cleaner into this. I'm just hoping once the solvent can get in there, it could just start freeing it up. I feel it's probably not something too mechanical. It does want to move. It could be something related to this mechanism here, because on most things, when you push down on the little button, it actually locks it in place. And you can see when I push the button in, it does pop up, but of course that stays in. So maybe it's just something related to that. So it might be simple enough that we could just remove this mechanism that locks that, and then we'll just have the trigger non-latching. I started working it, and I did manage to free it up a bit, but then I decided to take that trigger cap off, and you can see right here how it's definitely binding up on it, and I can't even pull against it, so that thing's locked down. And of course, without the cap to pull it back up, that pin, there's a little detent, isn't coming back up. So let's try to fetch it. There we go, and see if that makes a difference. And you can see right away, look at that, that's working a lot better. So maybe it might be a case of just removing that, really. If it means getting this working, I think we can sacrifice that latch. I want to see if I can get into it. I can't undo these screws too successfully because they are corroded. I think this terminal might be okay, but the rest are definitely too far gone. In fact, even this one really doesn't want to go. So I'm just going to leave that. I'm going to see if I can lever off the plastic of the mechanism, the assembly first. Surprisingly simple inside. There's your switch contacts. And looks like a bit of a broken spring, but that's okay. So we've got to pop that in there, but let's just remove this because I want to take out that locking button here. And that was causing us a lot of trouble, so I think it's worth just getting rid of that. Because it's actually broken, believe it or not, it's broken from the end of the button. I suspect what happened was that's where it failed, and then this basically became wedged down. That is the broken spring. You can see it lost a few coils, so we've got rid of that. I've taken the spring out of this button, and it was quite a bit bigger diameter, but I managed to fit it in. And before it jumps out again, let me see if I can get this in. Yes, there you go. And you can see it right there. The existing spring for the other contact does also look a bit weak, but I think we're going to be okay. And you can see when you push on the trigger, they both compress in, and then you have that double pole action going on there. That's better. You can see now the spring taking up that tension, so it's really pushing that copper connector in nice and tight. So just a bit of lube-y lube. I'm going to put a tiny bit of lube on that. And then I'm going to pop the lid back on. And hopefully I can assemble this all back up. We're so close I can almost smell the flames. If I can just get all of those little wires to stay there while I put on their lid, which I'm just shaking off camera because it's full of crusts, I think would be good to go. Before we bother putting any more screws in and aligning it up and putting the plate back on, I thought it would be interesting at least just to pull the trigger. Oh, it is turning. Ready for action. I quite like how it's covered my entire microelectronics desk in wood. Wood dust.